I never thought breaking up with Mark would turn into something like this. We had been together for 3 years, and at first, everything was perfect. He was charming, attentive, the kind of person who made you feel like the most important thing in the world. But over time, his love started feeling less like affection and more like possession. He wanted to know where I was at all times, who I was talking to, and even questioned why I took so long to reply to texts. At first, I brushed it off as him being overly caring, but it got worse. If I didn't answer my phone right away, he'd show up at my place unannounced. He'd get jealous over coworkers, baristas, even my own friends. The final straw was when he went through my messages without my permission and accused me of cheating over nothing. That night, I told him it was over. He begged, cried, and then got furious. I blocked him on everything, and after a few days of silence, I thought Esteva final meant leave her. Then out of nowhere, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. It was late at night, and when I played it, all I heard was static, faint, crackling noise like someone breathing too close to the mic but never speaking. It lasted almost a full minute before cutting off. It creeped me out, but I tried to shake it off. Wrong number, maybe? But then, the next day, another voicemail came. This time, it was just silence. No static, no breathing, just an empty, suffocating quiet. It felt intentional. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to ignore it. I had done the right thing by cutting Mark out of my life, and I wasn't going to let some weird prank make me second-guess it. But then, later that night, I got a text from a different number. You shouldn't have done that. No name. No context. Just those 5 words. And that was when I started to feel afraid. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence, maybe a random prank. But deep down, I felt something wasn't right. The next day, I got another text. I know where you are. My hands went cold as I stared at the screen. I checked the number, different from the last one. I wanted to believe it was just some sick joke, but the uneasy feeling in my gut told me otherwise. I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked the number and tried to push it out of my mind. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Every time I walked past a window, I felt exposed, like eyes were on me. My apartment, which had always felt like a safe space, suddenly felt too open, too vulnerable. Then little things started happening. I came home to find my porch light unscrewed, leaving my doorway in complete darkness. My car had a fresh scratch along the driver's side, like someone had dragged a key across it. My front door lock felt off, like someone had tampered with it. My rational side tried to find explanations. Maybe the bulb just went out. Maybe I brushed against something with my car. Maybe eu estava apenas paranoico depois do dormino. Bate então veio a prova final. I woke up to another message. It was a picture of my apartment building. Taken at night. Taken from the outside. Someone had been standing there, watching me. And I had no idea. My chest tightened as I stared at the photo. The angle was low, like someone had been standing on the sidewalk, just outside my building. The timestamp showed it had been taken around 3 a.m. I had been asleep while someone was outside, taking pictures of my home. My fingers trembled as I locked my phone and rushed to check the front door. It was locked, just like I had left it. But that didn't mean anything. Whoever sent that photo hadn't needed to break in. They wanted me to know they were there. I tried to tell myself it could be a coincidence, that maybe someone had sent it to the wrong number. But I knew that wasn't true. My gut told me exactly what I didn't want to admit. It was him. Mark. I didn't tell anyone. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still didn't want to believe it was real. Maybe I thought I was overreacting. But after that night, I started noticing more things. Shadows shifting outside my window when no one should be there. My mailbox left open when I swore I had closed it. The feeling of being watched every time I stepped outside. The messages didn't stop either. They weren't frequent, but they were just enough to keep me on edge. You're so predictable. I liked that sweater you wore today. You never really thought you could hide from me, did you? My heart pounded every time my phone buzzed. I kept blocking the numbers, but it didn't matter. The messages always found a way through. Then, something happened that made me realize this wasn't just paranoia. I had a spare key hidden under a loose brick near my door. No one knew about it except me. I had used it once or twice when I forgot my keys inside, and it was always there. One morning, after another restless night, I checked. It was gone. My entire body went numb. Someone had been close enough to my door, had searched, and had taken it. My hands shook as I ran inside and locked every single bolt. I barely slept after that. I started double-checking my locks, keeping the curtains closed, and sleeping with a knife under my pillow. But how do you fight something you can't see? Every time I looked outside, there was no one there. Every time I checked my phone, another message had arrived. "I'll come say hi soon." My skin crawled. I didn't know what to do. If I went to the police, what would I even say? That I was getting creepy texts from different numbers? That someone might be watching me? There was no proof. Just a growing, suffocating dread that followed me everywhere. One night, I stayed up late, staring at my phone, waiting for another message. Hours passed. Nothing. My body was exhausted, but my mind was on high alert. Finally, around 3 a.m., just as I was about to doze off, my phone buzzed. I jumped, heart racing. It was a picture. My apartment again, but this time, the angle was closer. It was taken from my front door. My vision blurred as fear crashed over me like a wave. Whoever had taken it had been right there, just a few feet away. And I hadn't heard a thing. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a game. Whoever was doing this didn't just want to scare me. They wanted me to know how powerless I was. I sat in my bed, clutching my phone with shaking hands, staring at that image. My breath came in short, panic gasps. I had never felt so trapped in my own home before. And the worst part, deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I barely slept after that night. Every noise made me jump. Every shadow outside my window felt like a figure standing there watching. I started keeping a knife under my pillow, double-checking every lock before bed, even pushing a chair against the front door just in case. But none of it made me feel safer. Because the worst part wasn't that someone had been outside my door, it was that they wanted me to know. They weren't trying to break in. They weren't trying to rob me. They were playing with me, letting me feel their presence without ever revealing themselves. And I knew deep in my gut that it was Mark. But I still had no proof. Just a series of blocked numbers and a growing sense of dread. The messages didn't stop. They didn't come every day, but just enough to keep me on edge. Sometimes it was vague things like, "I liked your hair today." Other times it was worse. "You left your window unlocked last night. You looked so peaceful sleeping." The kind of messages that made my skin crawl. The kind of messages that meant he was close. One morning, I got a picture of my car in the parking lot. It was taken from behind, as if someone had been standing just a few feet away. The caption just said, "Still driving this piece of junk?" My stomach twisted. The last time Mark saw my car was months ago, when we were still together. Which meant he wasn't just watching me, he was following me. I started changing my routine, taking different routes home, parking in different spots, keeping my blinds closed all the time. But it didn't matter. The messages kept proving that no matter what I did, he was always one step ahead. "Nice coffee today." I had just gone to a cafe an hour before. "That new jacket looks good on you." I had just bought it that morning. It felt like there was no escape. He wasn't just watching from afar. He was close enough to see everything. I stopped going out alone after dark. I stopped using headphones when I walked anywhere. Every person who got too close to me in public made my heart pound. My whole life became a waiting game, expecting him to finally show himself. Then one night I heard it, a noise outside my bedroom window. A soft, deliberate tap. My body froze. It was past midnight, and I lived on the second floor. I held my breath, listening. Another tap. Slowly, I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling as I unlocked it. Just as I did, a message came in. "Are you awake?" I nearly dropped the phone. My whole body was shaking. He was out there, watching me, maybe even climbing up to my window. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. For a long moment, I just sat there, my mind screaming at me to do something. But then, just as suddenly as it had started, the tapping stopped. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, when I finally got the courage to check, there was nothing outside. No footprints. No marks on the wall. Nothing. It was like I had imagined the whole thing. But I knew I hadn't. And when I checked my phone again, I felt the blood drain from my face. Another picture. This time, it was of my bedroom window. Taken from outside. Taken from somewhere high up. My vision blurred. My stomach churned. He had been up there. He had been watching me. And I had done nothing. That was when I finally broke. I went to the police. I showed them the messages, the pictures, everything. But they weren't convinced. "It could be a prank," one of the officers said. "It's not illegal to take pictures of buildings." I felt like screaming. They filed a report, told me to stay vigilant, and sent me home with nothing but false reassurance. I knew they wouldn't take it seriously until it was too late. Until he was inside my apartment. Until something worse happened. And that thought made me sick. I started sleeping with the lights on. I put a heavy dresser in front of my bedroom door. I even bought a cheap security camera and pointed it at my window, desperate for proof. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't stop him. Because he was smart. He was patient. He wanted me to know he was there without ever giving me anything concrete to use against him. He was playing a game, and I was losing. Then one night, I woke up to something worse than a message. Worse than a picture. I woke up to my phone ringing. The screen showed unknown caller. My heart pounded in my chest as I hesitated, staring at it. I didn't want to answer. I knew I shouldn't answer. But I did. And the second I put the phone to my ear, I heard his voice. "I'm outside." I shot up from my bed, my entire body going cold. My breathing was erratic as I stumbled to my window, my hands shaking as I pulled back the curtain. The street was empty. No one was there. But I knew he wasn't lying. He was out there somewhere, watching me panic, enjoying it. I dropped the curtain and backed away, my heart racing as I dialed 911. This time, they had to believe me. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the area, checked my building's security cameras, questioned my neighbors. But there was nothing. No footprints. No suspicious cars. No sign of anyone lurking around. One of the officers pulled me aside and gave me that same tired look. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" My hands clenched into fists. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't making this up. But the way they spoke to me, the way they doubted me, made me feel helpless. Like Mark had already won. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in my bed, gripping my phone, staring at the screen, waiting for the next message to come. And when it finally did, my stomach dropped. It was just 4 words. Simple. Mocking. "You never saw me." The feeling of helplessness gnawed at me from the inside. The police found nothing. No trace, no sign that anyone had actually been there. They told me to stay calm and be more careful. How could I stay calm when I knew he was out there, watching me? It wasn't just paranoia. It was a brutal reality that no one seemed to understand. And the worst part, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to escape something I couldn't even see. In the following days, my home became a battlefield of the mind. Every creak or sound would make me flinch, expecting the worst. I knew it wasn't just my imagination, but the cruel truth that no one seemed to get. It felt like he was waiting for me to make a mistake. Like he was testing my resolve, pushing me to the edge of my sanity. Even a simple trip to the grocery store felt like a dangerous mission. I avoided the quiet streets, looked over my shoulder constantly, and when I finally made it back home, I locked every door and window. But the messages kept coming. They were more frequent, more personal. One night, I found a picture of myself asleep. My heart stopped. It wasn't from any of the times I'd caught a glimpse of someone lurking. This photo was taken from inside my own room while I slept. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. He was in my house. He was closer than I ever imagined. But the thought of confronting him, of finding out where he was hiding, filled me with more dread than I could handle. The nights grew longer, and the walls of my apartment seemed to close in on me. I couldn't escape the gnawing feeling that I was being suffocated by my own fear. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, Mark's face, twisted with malice and obsession. I had always known that he was controlling, but I never imagined he was capable of this. Not in my worst nightmares. Then one evening, I received a message that shook me to my core. "I've been watching you longer than you think. I know your every move. And I always will." The message wasn't just a threat. It was a confession. He had been watching me for longer than I even knew. I thought back to all the odd occurrences, the small things I had dismissed as coincidence. The empty coffee cup on my windowsill, the weird scratch marks on my door that I assumed were just the wind. It all made sense now. He had been in my space, blending into my world undetected. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to confront him, to end this madness once and for all. I traced the messages back to their source, using everything I could, his words, the photos, even the timestamps. It was all there. I knew where he was. I didn't call the police this time. They had failed me before, and I wasn't going to let them fail me again. I made my way to the location, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind raced with the possibility that it could all be a trap. But the anger burning inside me pushed me forward. When I arrived, I didn't find Mark waiting in the shadows. No, this time the truth was far worse. The door opened as I knocked. And there, standing in front of me, was my cousin Tom. The person I trusted most in the world. "You didn't think I'd let him have all the fun, did you?" Tom said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I could barely comprehend it. My own flesh and blood, the therapist I had trusted with my darkest thoughts, had been behind it all. He had manipulated me, fed me lies, and watched me spiral into madness. The experiment he had been conducting wasn't just on my sleep patterns, it was on my sanity. And as I stood there, paralyzed by the shock of it all, he laughed.